Right, good morning. I hope you're doing well. This is Good Morning Kenya, the only way to start your day. And with me in studio today, I've got guests from a conference that's happening in this country. Are you familiar with this conference? Are you familiar with what it's all about? Kenya has been a host to rather high-level conferences of late, and this is just the latest in a series of conferences. Are you familiar with it? Do you know what's happening? KBC Channel 1 has been covering it live every single day from its commencement to its finish. We are the host broadcaster. Are you familiar with it? Let us know what you think about it. Let us know your views from the youth forum, the women's forum that we actually aired earlier. And how you can do that is SMS line 22162. And you can also tweet us via our Twitter handle at KBC Channel 1. My personal Twitter handle is at Muyakane, at Sami1Jeroge, and at Safin_Achieng for my co-presenters. Now, this morning, I'm joined by a rather interesting panel of rather youthful figures, youthful people, and I'll have them introduce themselves and give you an idea of what their take has been, of course, in regard to the conferences that we've been having in this country, in Nairobi. Welcome to KBC Channel 1.
Thank you.
Perhaps we say, someone said ladies first,
yeah.
And then the same person went ahead to say ladies first, men before. So, by this time, we'll take the first part.
Sure.
So let's start with you.
Okay.
Tell us something about yourself.
I'm Sandra Mwaranya. I'm the Executive Director of the Student Consortium for Human Rights Advocacy. We are a national human rights youth society that promotes human rights through human rights education. We work with students in tertiary institutions and high schools through leading actions, human rights actions like debate competitions, essay competitions. And I'm just glad to be part of this process because it really reflects the conversations that we've been having through the human rights awareness campaigns.
Brilliant, brilliant. What about you, sir?
Thank you very much, Victor. I'm glad to be here first. I'm Ben Omilo. I work with the Africa Youth Trust. Africa Youth Trust is a youth-led organization which is headquartered here in Nairobi. And yes, I'm a CSO Development Effectiveness Project Associate, which is one of the many projects we run at Africa Youth Trust. And this project is really associated with this event of high-level meeting too, because it focuses on youth and development effectiveness, and of course the SDGs. So we work in East Africa, we are not only in Kenya, and we have also extended our tentacles to the southern region, whereby we have our partners in Zimbabwe, that is NAYO, the National Association of Youth Organizations. We have ZANEO from Zambia, and we have an organization from Malawi, plus many other. We are exploring the South and Africa. And in East Africa, we have a lot of processes like youth and integration. We also have projects on youth and economic empowerment. We have our
Quite a wide reach, that.
Yes, wide reach. Actually, this project on youth and economic empowerment we are implementing in Dar es Salaam and in Kenya in 3 counties, that is of Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu.
Brilliant,
we have our office, our annex office at One Stop Youth Center, and we partner a lot with the county government.
Right.
So yeah, that is where I work. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good to have you here.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Milo. Karibu sana.
Yeah.
What about you, sir?
Well, my name is Claudio Frausto, and because you are my friends, you can call me Claudio, just Claudio. Right. I'm from Mexico,
right.
And I'm part of the Latin American Youth Alliance. We are an articulation of several organizations across the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. And we've been advocating for the 2030 agenda, and of course here at the high-level meeting for effective development cooperation, because here's where several agendas cross. You know, here's how do you implement those all those negotiations and all those outcome documents. So we actually work with youth, with young people, and we focus on sexual and reproductive health and rights.
That's your main focus.
Yes, yes, empowerment throughout the sexual and reproductive health and rights.
Brilliant, brilliant. Welcome to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So now, I want us to talk about the youth agenda, okay, and I want us to talk about how what that occupies in the whole conversation, in the whole table in regard to this forum, this high-level meeting too, the conferences that we've been having? What has been the space that the youth have occupied in the deliberations so far? Let's start with you.
So far, one, we've had a youth forum, which is good. We've been able to bring together all the different youth organizations to discuss this agenda and to share what we know, including our experiences. So having that forum on Monday was actually quite good because we were able to collect our ideas. That's when we drafted the youth statement and sort of collectively inputted into it, which will be presented later on today. I'm sure Claudia will talk more about that.
But hang on a second, just to break this down a little bit, was there, for those of you who didn't actually watch this live on KBC Channel 1, because we did broadcast it and we're broadcasting the rest of the proceedings as well, would you just explain this for a second? Was there a theme to the discussions? Because all these are youth groups from across the world, and the focus is actually across a large, large array of issues. He's talking about reproductive health. He's talking about matters, youth and the economy, youth and governance, youth and you're talking about youth and human rights. He's got quite a large cover as well. So was there a major agenda or a theme that brought all these youth groups together, or what was it?
The main theme was we are trying to universalize the effective development towards our people's agenda.
What does that mean?
That means we want the youth aspirations to be included. If anything, the statement itself captures what it is that we are pushing for within that theme, which is making development work for us and with us. And that means we want to be included in the processes actively and meaningfully. And so a lot of our contributions were sort of unpacking what that means. How do we want to be included in the process? So we want to be included in accountability mechanisms. We want to be included in the design of these programs. We want to be included in the monitoring and evaluation of these programs all through the process. And so there's a breakdown of what does it take for us to do that. And that sort of captures the people's agenda.
Ben, tell me this. Who actually formulates these programs that we're talking about, that the youth need to be included in?
Actually, I know Claudia will talk about it later, about the history of youth participation or engagement in the CPDE process. The CPDE means CSO Partnerships for Development Effectiveness, or cooperation, that is. And initially, you will find that before, the youth agenda was not in this process. But I think from Mexico is when young people started pushing for their space. There was no space for the youth. There was even no space for the civil society organizations. And as you will understand that this process is a partnership, a cooperation of governments and civil society organizations, the philanthropy, the private sector, and all the development partners. Now, in this case, when you ask about who is, initiating this process, this process is led by the youth themselves. Because if youth could not have woken up and, claimed this space, I think even today there will be no any process in regard to the youth. And I want to thank the youth who are in Mexico, the youth who are, say, in Busan, because we are guided by the 4 Busan principles. And the 4 main Busan principles that guide this process of development effectiveness is, one, we have ownership of the development projects by developing countries. That is one. 2, we have focus on results, that all development projects must have tangible results. We must see that when aid is allocated in Africa or in any developing country, we have to see it is results. Is the results effective to the, you mean the beneficiaries?
The beneficiaries, the people that targeted.
And who are these beneficiaries?
Right.
We also have...
that's number 2?
Yeah, that's number 2. We also have matters on, is it monitoring and evaluation? And, when we talk of monitoring and evaluation, we have to evaluate these projects as young people, as governments, you know, as civil society organizations, and, you know, general accountability.
Accountability.
Yes.
Oversight, generally?
Yeah, that oversight. And when we talk about oversight, we have, you are aware of social audits and community, when the community owns the project. We don't want to see white elephants. We don't want to see this aspect of whereby the official donor aid has come and it is being like just misused like that.
Right.
So this process is led by the young people from across the countries, drawn from the government, drawn from the civil society organization, drawn from the philanthropy, drawn from the parliamentarians across. Even we had a parliamentarian session, yeah, and in parliaments we also have young parliamentarians, so to speak.
Brilliant. Now,
Yeah.
Claudia, I want you to jump in on this from what you know he's spoken about. I want you to tell us what is the impact of the youth inclusion or involvement in all these processes, in the process, so to speak. What impact? He's spoken about results. So let's talk about results in this sense. What results do you expect to see as a result of the inclusion and involvement of the youth in this process?
Okay. Well, first, we, in order to talk about results, we have to say that we are expecting a change, because the development model that we have been carrying out throughout the world is based on exclusion, right? To say that we are expecting a change, because the development model that we have been carrying out throughout the world is based on exclusion, right? So we've been excluding young people, we've been excluding indigenous people, we've been excluding women. So
People with disabilities.
yes, yes.
children.
So it's time to include all of them, all of us, and to really redefine and to understand differently the concept of development, because especially in the southern, the global south, you know, we've been experiencing this exclusion. So what are we expecting? What results are we expecting? We are expecting to actually be able to talk in first person, you know. They have been talking, politicians and elder people have been talking about young people and about women, but it's always, you know, white old men, white old rich men.
Yeah, sure.
So we want to be able to express ourselves, and if we want to make the cooperation and development really effective, we have to make an investment in young people. Why? Because this will have a long-term impact. You know, if you invest right now in young people, in children, you will have a long-lasting results.
Okay.
Right?
Now, and I want you to, this is a question directed to you.
Okay.
Let's talk about, okay, fine. So it's all well and good for the youth to be included in these processes. What can they contribute, rather than just be part of the process? Apart from that, what can they do to contribute to all these processes?
Thank you. One thing that I feel society assumes is that young people do not know, they're inexperienced, they're unaware, and which really is not the case, because, and I can speak from my background as, you know, with the student consortium, because what we do is create awareness, and even through the debate platforms, we're able to see young people articulating their views, articulating what they feel about development, what they feel about participation, and what they feel about some of these processes. And so I feel what we can bring to the table, first of all, is being taken seriously, to be even heard, but also coming up with innovative ideas on how to engage. Because, like he's saying, the people who have for the longest time led this process are generations ahead of us, and the reality is, good they may be, but they reflect their own realities that they were used to. But the world is changing. The world is constantly changing, and we are part of this world. But not only part of this world, we also want to secure the world for those who are coming after us. And so what we're bringing to the table is innovative solutions based on our current realities. And participate. We have energy, you know, and that's the stereotype. But then it's also a true stereotype. We do have energy. We do have time and skill to bring innovative ideas into the process. And so I think that is one key thing that needs to be taken seriously.
Real quick, just before you jump in, do you think that the inclusion of the youth is actually made to be part of the process, if you may, as a part of the rules, if you may, do you think that this will be sustainable? And if that is the case, do you think that in the long run the process would be transformed in some way to be more efficient, more accountable, more result-oriented, as you say? Actually, you did only mention 3 pillars. I'm expecting the fourth one from the Busan, you said?
The 4 Busan principles.
Principles, yes.
Yes.
You mentioned only 3.
Yes.
That is, number one was in regard to accountability.
Yeah.
The second one was in regard to ownership and results.
Then the result. Then we have inclusion, I think.
Inclusion?
Inclusion is one of the principles. Like
Perfect.
Yeah.
So with inclusion, if this is actually, okay, it's one thing, you did say something very interesting, that the youth are pushing for their space. They're seeking to be heard away from the establishment, if you may, like, the old white people, the rich people, and all that, they're running things. Okay, so the youth are pushing for their space. Fine. Assuming this is taken up, and it's no longer a situation where the youth are pushing for their space, they have it. They have a seat at the table where decisions are made. A seat at the table, they have a voice, a vote to contribute to the process.
Yes.
What other, in the long run, what other benefits should we expect from that?
I absolutely agree that there will be transformative change because the young people form a large proportion of the population. And if you want the world to change, especially now, we need an attitude change, a mindset shift, right? And that will happen when young people are brought into the table. Why? Because once we're taken seriously, we'll start also believing in ourselves, okay? Because I feel right now the system has sort of marginalized us, and sometimes we start believing in that, in the dysfunction. In the dysfunction, narrative. We become apathetic, we become hopeless. Well, we're like, there's nothing that we can do. But I imagine when we're taken in, we're able to, there's a conducive enabling space to enable us to actually share our ideas. And in the long run, I feel like that will start that culture shift that we're looking for. There's a movement that's called Africans Rising. And I feel especially in our region and also just in the southern hemisphere, we need to change that mindset where we've been for the longest time behind. Right? In terms of not taken seriously, not taken seriously. And so for us, I feel like if we're finally put in the table as young people, then that mindset shift starts to happen.
Ben, jump on this.
Just to add on,
I feel you have a point.
Young people, for all along, have been taken as consumers of these policies. Consumers of these, programs.
Interesting point.
At the end of the day, we don't see them being at the initiation, table. People come up with their programs, even especially during political periods, like campaigns. I'll do this for the youth. I'll do that for the youth. Have you consulted the youth?
Right.
At the end of the day, we think that young people, that mindset that these are still children. They don't have a stake. They don't have a voice. They should not be consulted. We know. We have been there. We have been youth, and we know what they want. Times change. These are 21st century. The needs of young people in the 19th century or whatever is not they're not the same needs. Even communicating to the young people entirely has changed entirely.
Yes.
So, and it is across the globe. It is across the globe. It is not just an African problem. It is not just a Kenyan problem. Talk of unemployment. It is cutting across.
Speaking about issues that cut across the board, and it's interesting you've brought that up, and Claudia, I want you to jump in on this. It's very interesting. Both of you are from this country, from Kenya, and your reach is in East and Southern Africa, right? For you. Your reach is in Latin America, essentially.
Yeah.
One common factor between these two regions is that there are many nations that are considered to be failed states. There are many nations that are considered to be developing nations, poor nations. And when I say developing nations, I use it in the way it's actually used out there, as a bad thing, as a bad label. It's developing world, third world. Okay, so let's for the sake of argument use that term. All these nations, and one of the key things that affects all these nations, that affects unemployment, as you mentioned, is corruption among governments. What is the space for the youth in regard to matters corruption? What is the space? What in the youth statement, or is it agenda that you came up with? What space is there? What facility is there to deal with matters corruption? Because the youth of today are the leaders of the decision makers. I know you're pushing to have the youth making decisions right away, but let's say the people who are making decisions right now were once youth themselves, and those decisions are taking us nowhere. With massive corruption in our governments, in loss of jobs, loss of national income and all that. So what space do the youth occupy in that conversation? What voice, what issues would they, what contribution would they be able to make in regard to that, dealing with corruption?
Well, the bosom principles are really important, I mean, accountability, transparency, participation process are really important. Because if you have a lot of eyes checking what governments do, you are able to vigilate their action. So corruption is less probable, right? And I think, Victor, you were raising a really interesting topic, like why should we be there? Why young people should be? Just because we are young? Well, no, not necessarily. But we have to have a sustainable scope, I was just reading that around 80 or 90% of the people who actually were in the UN headquarters when the development agenda was voted and decided there will be death by 2030. So they were deciding an agenda that we will
never see.
And that we have to face,
to live with.
Yeah. So I think
it only makes sense that the youth have to be there. Yeah. They are the direct beneficiaries.
And we have to make this participative process sustainable.
Right.
How do we do that? We include the children, and we include the coming generations,
what she's doing, with the high school students and everything,
that is
to keep the train moving.
That's it, and we have to be able to enable them to make decisions, about the public issues, and to make decisions about their body, to make decisions about their communities and their countries.
But Claudio, to make decisions, you need information.
Yeah,
hence awareness.
Yeah.
How are we doing in regard to awareness?
Well,
in your experience in regard to reproductive health and where you come from, what has been your experience in regard to awareness? And we'll come to.
Well, I think it's growing, and that's a good thing.
What are the challenges?
We have more information. Well, we obviously face conservative governments, religious movements. Not all of them. Let me be clear about that. But we have to face traditions, as Sandra was saying, it's a change of set of mind,
Right. What about you? What challenges have you faced in regard to awareness?
Surely, one thing I have to mention
and how important is it, according to you?
Yeah, exactly. The awareness is very important because they say information is power. Even this HLM2, I believe many young people and Kenyans are not aware. There have been processes here in Nairobi, for instance. We have had TICAD, we had COP20.
WTO, COP20.
Exactly. And we'll get on the streets of Nairobi and people are like, what is not happening? They are not even aware.
There's something like that happening.
So, because they lack information, and this information first, it is for the informer and the informed. The informed must seek the information. Like young people, we have to seek this information.
And is the information there to meet the desire?
The information might be there. We have other information which are hidden. I want to thank the media. The media has done its best. Even now, we are disseminating issues on HLM2.
Right.
But you find that very few people are interested even to read newspapers. Very few people are interested to watch
interviews like these. Watch the proceedings that are live for free.
Yes, and with the digitalization of the media and...
I mean, Claudia had to... How many airplanes did you take to come here?
It took me around 30 hours to
30 hours to fly here, and someone can actually get the proceedings from the comfort of their home.
Yes.
You know, through KBC Channel 1.
But I think you're raising like a really interesting topic, because we have a lot of information. We have internet, we have... but we are not making that information accessible, available, and
for
everyone to understand,
and digestible.
You know?
Yes.
Because some of this stuff, honestly, some of this stuff has the quality of being rather complex. So some of these terms that are used in the NGO world, you know,
and they sound complex. Like when I was training young people in Uganda and in Rwanda and Tanzania about HLM2, about the Busan principles, you know. It sounded so technical, and it is like this is an elitist kind of. And when you talk about the 4 Busan principles, these are things that are there. These are things that, you know, when you talk about incorporating young people, when you talk about focus on results, we have been talking about results in Kenya, starting with our CDF, going to our county devolved funds and county governments and national governments. We have been talking about accountability. So when we say that these are the Busan principles, it is not something new.
It's
but people look at it as a very elitist, technical, and you know,
perhaps
also...
I can give you a challenge as she jumps in. The challenge I can give you, and both of you, is this. You mentioned about the informer and the informed. Okay? But this stuff has to be digestible. It has to be broken down to, you know, bits and pieces that the ordinary youth out there can not just grasp, but also, you know, explain to the next one. Because the awareness battle will never be won, ever. Unless, you know, because it needs a whole lot more bits and pieces that the ordinary youth out there can not just grasp, but also, you know, explain to the next one. Because the awareness battle will never be won, ever. Unless, you know, because it needs a whole lot more resources than anyone has. Indeed. And that's the challenge of governments, of civil society, the world over, awareness.
Well, you captured the point. I was just going to say, yes, actually the language that you use is not youth-friendly when trying to relay some of this information. I mean, it's quite technical, not just for the youth, for even other stakeholders. And it's only the NGO technocrats that would be able to communicate about some of these principles and commitments. And so for us, I think, and that's a challenge that I have encountered, even in human rights advocacy, how do we, like you're saying, break it down to be youth-friendly, communicable, accessible, and available. So that's one challenge that I feel really needs to be taken into account, especially from the global cooperation perspective. But secondly, because you'd asked what are the challenges, and some of it was insinuated, access to information. From a rights perspective, access to information is very key. But not just any information. We want access to the relevant public information, because it is only when we have this information, even as young people, then we can hold the processes and the leaders to account. Because it's one thing having access to information that they want us to see, and then being not really, because you can't really, to be properly empowered, you need the full information. So the full information needs to be publicly available. We need to get information through freedom of press. So all these repressive systems that are trying to curb that freedom, you know, that's barring information to us young people.
And actually, on that point of access to information, we have a law which was passed recently. And actually, Kenya is one of the, my brother, Kenya is one of the governments or countries that are good at policy formulation. And we just passed the access to information recently, and which gives guidelines that information should be accessed to the public, and certain informations, those barriers of so very important information should be accessible to the public. But again, this information, the way it is packaged, for example, in the in the development effectiveness terms, we have a lot of jargon. You will hear of ODA, then somebody is like, what is ODA?
Right.
You will hear of GCPDE.
Yes,
all those
exactly.
terminologies, as she has said, she
Yeah.
put it right that even in the NGO world, we have the NGO language.
Exactly,
which
the lingo,
and
which locks out a lot of people.
it locks out a lot
Yeah.
of people, whereas the civil society, we claim to be working for the society, for
Exactly.
the masses and people's interest. I think we should be. It is time that we should repackage this information so that it is.
I like that you say that, because that was my next challenge. I was going to challenge you. The youth want a space at the table. Okay.
Yes.
One of the things I suggest that you as leaders bring to the table is the subject of breaking this stuff down so that it can be communicated properly. Because at the end of the day, it's entirely hopeless. And I'm in a bit of a situation here now. We're entirely out of time, I'm afraid. Okay. This is only one conversation, and this is, I want to put it out there, this is only one conversation out of many potential conversations that could be happening. There's a conference that's going on right now. Please tune in. It's live and free and direct, coming to you in your living room, in your bedroom, wherever it is that you are, free of charge on KBC Channel 1. You can watch these gentlemen and this brilliant young lady working, you know, talking about issues that affect you and me. Take part in these conversations. We have access to social media. Let us take these conversations on social media. One way we can do that through our platform as KBC is use our hashtag GMKKBC. At KBC Channel 1 is our Twitter handle. My personal Twitter handle is @Muyakane. And they're going to give you their Twitter handles. Let's keep this conversation going on Facebook, on Twitter, and all the other platforms, even Snapchat and Instagram and all that. We have access to all these channels of information, and it is ultimately our responsibility to use them. As Omilo said, you know, it wouldn't help. This stuff doesn't touch you if you don't actually show interest in it, okay? So I think we better do that. As we finish, I would like to give you people essentially just a short bracket of time to give your parting shots. I know this conversation is by no means over. We've only scratched the surface, but I'm afraid we are out of time. So I just want you to think about something. Give us one thing that really is in your heart that you'd like the youth of the world to know, because this program is watched across Africa and in the diaspora. Okay. So who would like to go first? Well, hit us.
Victor, I would like to thank
there's your camera, right there.
The space and all the people in Kenya. I think in the end, it is about our everyday lives, you know. You should be able to go out and have a protest. You should be able to make decisions about your body. You should be able to have quality education. You should be able to have a good meal, a good job, a home where to live in. So it's all about that, really. It's about your everyday life. And all these complex stuff and terms, they are about that. So we are working, we are advocating in order to young people to exercise those rights, because they are recognized by the world, by almost every country in the world. So we have to work in order to translate them into actions and into reality. Thank you very much, Victor.
Brilliant. How about you, Mr. Omilo?
Okay, thank you for hosting us here. One thing is
Here's
that...
your camera. The one that has a red light on top of it.
Okay. One thing is that, you know, it has been always said that the youth, we are the greatest constituency. What does this then show? Can we prove to the world that we are really the greatest constituency? We are pushing for an agenda that we don't want just to be present, but influence and impact. We are moving from presence to, you know, influence, meaningful youth participation. And this meaningful youth participation is what is going to make us deliver. We're not just going to deliver because we are many, but because we influence. And because we know, we have the information, we share the information. This is going to help us change the narrative. And we're not just going to be put there, like, where are the youth? We have to voice out our concerns, voice out our desires, so that they are included in these processes. I know there are many international processes, protocols, so to speak, and many things going on. As young people, if we are not going to take a charge and be heard and be felt, then we are going not to be included. It is either you are on the table or on the menu. So that is what we are pushing.
Oh wow!
Thank you very much.
What a bite! What a parting shot!
Yes.
Tough act to follow. Here's your camera right
Okay.
here.
As young people, we want to be taken seriously. We want to own our development, and we want to create a world that where we can enjoy fully our human rights. And what this means is we have to seek information. Let's not just sit down and say it's for someone else. The information is available. We have the internet. Seek this information, be informed, so that we can act. And when we act, if you cannot get into high-level spaces, that's fine. That's not the only way you can engage. Claim your own space. We, as youth, have technology. We're experts in technology. Let's claim that space. Use social media. Make Facebook work for you. Make Twitter work for you. And articulate your issues. Articulate your views on some of these things. Because if you don't, then we'll allow the other people to do, and then we'll complain that we're not being taken seriously. So let's be taken seriously.
Brilliant, brilliant. I couldn't have said it better myself. I quite honestly couldn't have said it better myself. And I'll leave you with the words of Omilo. You're either on the menu or at the table. So which one are you? Where are you? What are you? And what do you want to be? Are you part of the menu? Or are you on the table waiting to be served from the menu? And on that note, we end this interview. Coming up next is an interview with a young upcoming artist, Dida. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you so much for coming.